Hello film fans and welcome to this episode of the Sherlockian. Now were you, like me, slightly underwhelmed to see that the fourth episode of Frozen Planet was going to focus on the Antarctic? I must admit, I thought, oh, not again, because we'd already had one episode on the Arctic and we'd had an entire series, Frozen Planet 1, looking at both of them, and I thought, do we really need to spend another series looking at the Antarctic? It seems to me that we've pretty much seen everything we're going to see about the Antarctic. Generally speaking, most documentaries about it are roughly the same. They show you, emperor penguins, they show you, frozen wastes, they show you a few seals, maybe chuck in a few killer whales. That's about it, really, isn't it? And they just sort of recycle those plot points over and over again. So you can imagine how stupid I felt when I watched Frozen Planet episode 4, which is absolutely amazing. It sort of takes concepts which you're familiar with and then kind of recycles them to make you kind of think, oh yeah, I forgot about that, or alternatively think, wow, I didn't even know that existed. So, for example, did you know that there are volcanoes in Antarctica? I mean, I think somewhere in the back of my mind I was vaguely aware that there might be, but I always just sort of assumed there were sort of dormant ones, they say, that Olympus Mons is a massive volcano on Mars, but, it doesn't actually spout out lava, it's just, there. Well, no, these are actually proper lava-y volcanoes and the Antarctic Peninsula. It's absolutely amazing. And they show you these incredible sequences where you have these tall pinnacles of ice and there's steam coming out the top of them. It looks absolutely insane, but it's amazing. And some of them even have lava in the bottom of them. It's absolutely brilliant. Normally, I must admit, in wildlife documentaries, when they show you kind of sequences of the of sort of like the natural landscape, I kind of go, oh yeah, very pretty. Can you move on now to the animals? I'm not a massive fan, generally speaking. Well, I like the fact they include it, but I don't like them to do it for too long. But this was absolutely brilliant. I could happily see an entire documentary on it, and it was actually brilliant. And then they show you there's a desert in the middle of the Antarctic. And I thought, what? When I saw it first, I thought, that's just a trick of the light. It looks like sand, but it will just be a blizzard. And the light's just a bit strange. But no, it's a proper sandy desert. Apparently it's not rained there on, the evolutionary timeline for millions of years. And nothing lives there. And the only thing they've ever found that was living is a dead and now mummified crab-eater seal, which nobody has any idea how it got there. It's absolutely strange as anything. Plus the fact you sort of think, if you told Scott and his mates when they were dying in that tent in the middle of the Antarctic wastes, a few miles away from their base camp, but they're unable to get back there because of the blizzard. If you'd said, if you go, a few hundred miles over that way, you actually come to a desert, you imagine how they'd have felt. They'd have been like, great, that's all we need round here. Antarctica really is quite weird, which I think the documentary does a great job of showing, and it kind of, I think, pulls away from kind of a lot of the cliches which people would come to sort of associate. Certainly I'd come to associate with Antarctica, penguins and seals and stuff. It has those as well, but it sort of shows you different parts of Antarctica in an amazing new way. One of the ways I really like they sort of recycle is the way this episode uses leopard seals, which are kind of your staple Antarctic predator. Generally speaking, most documentaries on Antarctica will have a leopard seal in it, particularly if they're focusing on things like penguins. And I just expected it would probably be a normal leopard seal kind of encounter, which I didn't mind because I like leopard seals. I think they're probably one of my favourite animals ever. I really like the way they kind of combine being absolutely gorgeous with being really ugly. There's kind of, every time I see one on screen, you really get the sense of the power through it. They look so big, mainly because I think they're often filmed, really close up by the cameraman, because the leopard seals aren't afraid of people at all and come right up really close. And you get the sense that they're almost like man-sized, if not actually bigger than a human, and they just feel really sort of dangerous and like a really kind of gorgeous, kind of powerful predator. And I just expected they'd show you hunting penguins like they always do, which they do, but they show you it in quite an interesting way. So they go to South Georgia, which obviously is an island off the Antarctic Peninsula, and then you see these king penguins, which have to walk all the way from the nesting colony to the sea, and just as they're about to get into the water, that you can see that David Attenborough, says something, portentous, and then you see them all start to panic, and then you see a leopard seal, and then you see another one, and another one, and another one. There's 30 of them there, and they don't exactly hunt together because as far as I was aware from the footage they showed you, you could see they didn't actually seem to be working together as a team so much, but they clearly kind of use each other in kind of the way sort of crocodiles do. You know, they don't actually gang up on their prey, but they use each other's presence to their advantage. And at one point, one of the leopards actually jumps out of the water and actually runs the penguins down on land, which is absolutely incredible. I think I've seen a leopard seal try to do that in a documentary before, but I've never seen it actually do it successfully. So that was really cool. I was really excited to see that. And just generally, I thought anything with leopard seals in it always really impresses me. Did you know, for example, that a leopard seal once approached a National Geographic cameraman in the water and started to bring him first of all, live penguins, because she just assumed he was another leopard seal, because I suppose he's about the same size as a leopard seal, and I suppose she sort of thought he was a bit incompetent and needed a bit of help, because he clearly wasn't having much success with these penguins. And then, because he didn't obviously catch any of the ones she gave him, she then brought him a dead penguin, as if to say, well, there you go, you can't mess that one up, can you? Which I really like. I like the idea. This idea of the kind of like an intelligent animal trying to sort of flirt with a cameraman. It's quite cool. And then I thought, well, that'll be it then. But then they moved on and showed you another brilliant leopard seal sequence, although one that you probably, well, in fact, you would never have seen before on camera at all. Now, I wasn't going to talk about orcas in this episode. I actually thought to myself, when I saw the trailer to the last episode, I thought, no, not going to talk about orcas, because I talk about them quite a lot on this YouTube channel generally, and I thought people just get fed up with me talking about them, and I was fed up with talking about them, to be honest. But unfortunately, the BBC did me again, because they first of all just show you sequences very similar to the one they showed you in the first episode, and I thought, yeah, great, I've talked about this already, don't have to talk about it again, great, move on please. And then they kind of show that, you know, the orcas are having to sort of change their prey because they can't hunt Weddell seals anymore because of global warming and the fact that they're now all on land. So they're trying to hunt crab-eater seals, and I thought, vaguely interesting. Well, I mean, it is interesting, but I thought, don't have to talk about it still. You know, you're all right, don't have to talk about it. And then it shows you a sequence that they hunt a leopard seal. And I thought, oh, great. Because I'd always known about this, which is more than I think the camera crew did. I did know that orcas are about the only thing that are supposed to hunt leopard seals. But I'd never seen it on camera before, which it turns out is not a surprise because nobody's ever filmed it before. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, great. And now I'm going to have to talk about it because it was really interesting. What I found quite fascinating is the leopard seal was actually far less aggressive than I thought it would be. If you see, in fact, well, orcas hunting any seals, particularly in Frozen Planet 1, which I thought had some brilliant shots of them underwater hunting seals. And this also shows it again with the crab eaters. Some seal species are actually quite aggressive towards orcas, and it's quite funny because the orcas aren't really aggressive back. They actually just try and use their numbers to grab the seal from behind and drown it, which is interesting. It was completely different to how I always thought orcas hunted, which I always assumed, you know, the big predatory mammals and they just grab something, you know, rip it to shreds. That's how when I was a child I assumed they hunted. Bits like great white sharks do, really. But no, they basically hunt in a much more sort of clever manner. And I was surprised the leopard seal, which obviously is a big, powerful predator in its own right, didn't sort of try and attack. But I think it was just a bit confused. They obviously aren't hunted very often by orcas. And so when these orcas surrounded it, you know, it just sort of looked a bit like... It showed its teeth a few times, but it wasn't as aggressive as I thought it would be. The other thing that's interesting is they actually point out that actually it gets in the water after they try and smash the ice up, which is actually a complete and utter stupid thing to do. It clearly just isn't used to being hunted by... well, anything, I expect. And this scene actually where they drag it underwater, unlike the other ones, which they showed you in the first episode, where you don't really see very clearly. It was kind of sort of indistinct when they kill it. This you actually see properly. The leopard seal was right close to the surface. It looked exhausted by that point. It was probably a much longer sequence than you actually see in the finished documentary. And they just slowly drag, one of them drags it underwater, and it looks horrible. You're sort of like, oh, imagine being in that situation. I'm glad orcas don't hunt people. Incidentally, actually, of those two animals in that sequence, the leopard seal and the orca, which do you think has actually killed a human being in the wild? Forget about captivity, obviously. But in the wild, have you made your guesses? Great, because it's that one. Yeah, actually, leopard seals have killed more people in the wild. I killed more people. They've killed one person. Apparently, a marine biologist was very sadly dragged under the water by one and drowned because she was snorkeling. But yeah, that seems really weird. If you showed Lynn Victorian, for example, those two species and said, there you go, the big seal or that massive whale, which one's killed more people? I think they'd have gone for the whale. But anyway, I digress. So I enjoyed that sequence. Well, enjoyed's a bit of a weird way to say it, because I like leopard seals much more than I like orcas. But I thought that sequence was interesting, something that I'd always heard about, which is the great thing about well, modern wildlife documentaries in particular, and documentaries generally, I think, they take things that you've heard about and then show you them. Which sounds obviously very simplistic, but I think that's what makes a wildlife documentary fascinating for me, that you kind of, it brings stuff I've read about to life. And finally, I think the one sequence that sort of stands out for me from this particular episode is the wandering albatross one. Now, you know, there's people that say the BBC, you know, is too liberal. You know, they say those commies at the Beeb, you know, they're all woke SJWs now, and, you know, they go around and they, you know, they just ruin things by trying to include too many people, you know. And I thought, wow, those people, when they saw this documentary, this particular episode, must be spitting out their cigars and thinking, right, I'm going to write to the Telegraph. Because I think this is the first BBC wildlife documentary, anyway, that has a same-sex couple in it. Now, I should stress there was a reason behind this. It actually has a point to it. I mean, it wasn't they were just doing it for the sake of it, shall we say. There was a reason. And it's really interesting. All jokes aside, obviously. But basically, wandering albatrosses, as I'm sure you know, mate for life. I mean, it's a thing most people know about albatrosses. They have these really strong pair bonds, can mate for, like, you know, over 50 years. But obviously... and so it starts off quite, you know, normally it shows you them, a male and a female doing sort of courtship displays, and then more males arrive and the female gets a bit, you know, sort of freaked out by this and flies off. And then a male approaches the other wanderer that we've already seen, and which is also a male. And I actually thought when I saw it, I thought, well, that's just a male, isn't it? And then they sort of start to go through their courtship display. And I thought, well, is it some kind of, you know, sort of trick? Is the male that's approached it trying to sort of, you know, sort of sneak into the colony? But it's not like wandering albatrosses are particularly aggressive towards each other. It doesn't seem to have any sort of biological advantage. And then David Attenborough explains, which is quite sad, really, that basically female wandering albatrosses feed much further north than males do, so they're more likely to get killed in sort of, you know, trawlers. And so that means there's now a massive gender imbalance between the two species. Sorry, two species. Two sexes. So that means obviously there's far more males than there are females, but obviously wandering albatrosses are intelligent and they form these strong pair bonds, which means that they don't want to be lonely, and that means they'd rather pair up with another male and obviously have some companionship rather than go through the rest of their life lonely and alone, and that's just really, really sad. And you sort of think, oh, that's really, it's both sweet and sad to think that there's actually an animal, which I never really thought about it, actually. You know, what does an animal like a wandering albatross do if it can't find a mate? One that clearly forms these strong attachments to another. And so it's interesting, but also, you know, actually quite, like, heartbreaking in a strange kind of way. And obviously it fits in very well with this overall very, like, strong anti-global warming message. Now, I used that before in one of my videos, and I thought afterwards you should probably have explained what you meant by that. I mean, anti-global warming as in we should try and stop global warming, not as in global warming doesn't exist. I think it's very clear from David Attenborough's narration that he does believe that there is such a thing as global warming. But so yeah, I thought that was fascinating, but also, like, really kind of, it made you think more, I think, than any of the other bits. Like, because I've seen things like, you know, polar bears now have to spend all the time on land and stuff like that, and the ice flows and the glaciers are sort of going backwards, and obviously, you know, it made me think when I saw it. But this actually, it kind of makes it far more personal, which I think was far more compelling than just saying, oh yeah, the ice is melting. So hopefully that will try and inspire change, just like Blue Planet did when it showed you that or rather Blue Planet 2, when it showed you that that whale when it was been slowly strangled by plastic, and almost immediately changed everything overnight, and then suddenly everybody got rid of plastic from their, like, you know, their commercial, but I say everybody, and got rid of all plastic. But at least it did have some effect. So yeah, that was Frozen Planet episode 4. I think my favourite episode so far, which really surprised me. It showed you, like, really made me think about Antarctica in a new way. And actually made me excited to see more stuff about it, which I never thought would be possible. I'd always thought, oh great, here's an Antarctica episode before. Because I just sort of kind of got used to them, so I'm recycling the same ideas. And next week looks like it's going to be really good too. It's like, obviously, it's set in the kind of the boreal forest. the trailers seem to show things like wolves and bison, so that'll be quite exciting. So yeah, that was the Sherlockian. Thanks very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Twitter as well. My Twitter handle is below in the description. So yeah, feel free to subscribe to that as well if you feel inclined. But yeah, thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.